Good morning, philosophers. We're going to continue with 50, 60, 70, 80, 83, letter 83. You demand an account of my days, generally as well as individually. You think well of me if you suppose that there is nothing in them for me to hide. And we should indeed live as if we were in public view, and think too as if someone could peer into the inmost recesses of our hearts, which someone can. For what is to be gained if something is concealed from man when nothing is barred from God? He is present in our minds, in attendance in the midst of our thoughts. Although by attendance I do not mean to suggest that he is not at times absent from our thoughts. I shall do as you say then, and gladly give you a record of what I do and in what order. I shall put myself under observation straight away and undertake a review of my day, a course which is of the utmost benefit. What really ruins our characters is the fact that none of us look back over his life. When we think about what we're going to do, and only rarely of that, and fail to think about what we have done, yet any plans for the future are dependent on the past. Today has been unbroken. No one has robbed me of any part of it. It has been wholly divided between my bed and my reading. A very small part of it is given over to physical exercise, and on this account I'm grateful for old age, for the exercise costs me little trouble. I only have to stir, and I'm weary, and that after all is the end of exercise even for the strongest. Interested in having my trainers? One's enough for me, Farius, a likable young fellow, as you know, but he's due for a change. I'm looking now for someone rather more youthful. He, in fact, declares that we're both at the same climacteric, since we're both losing our teeth. But I've reached the stage where I can only keep up with him, with difficulty, when we're out for a run, and before many days are out, I won't be able to keep up with him at all. See what daily exercise does for one? When two people are going in opposite directions, there's soon a big distance between them. He's coming up at the same time as I'm going downwards. And you know how much quicker travel is in the second of these directions. But I'm wrong. The age I'm at isn't one that is going downwards. It's one that's in headlong descent. However you'd like to hear how today's race ended, well, we made it a tie, something that doesn't often happen with runners. After this, more of a spell of exhaustion than of exercise, I had a cold plunge. Cold with me, meaning just short of warm. Here I am, once celebrated as a devotee of cold baths, regularly paying my respects to the canal on the 1st of January, and jumping into the maiden pool in just the same way as I read, wrote, and spoke some sentence or other every new year in order to ensure good luck in the coming year. And now I've shifted my scene of operations, first to the Tiber, then to my own pool here, which, even when I'm feeling my heartiest and don't cheat, has had the chill taken off it by the sun. It's a short step to a hot bath. The next thing is breakfast, which consists of some dry bread. No table laid, and no need to wash the hands after such a meal. I then have the briefest of naps. You know this habit of mine of dropping off for a moment or two, just slipping off the harness, as you might say. I find it enough to have simply stopped being awake. Sometimes I know I've been asleep, sometimes merely guess I have been. Zeno was a very great man, as well as the founder of our Stoic school. A school with an unequaled record for courageous and saintly living. Well, listen to the way in which, desiring to deter us from drunkenness, he deduces the principle that the good man won't get drunk. Quote, "No person who is drunk, he says, is entrusted with a secret. The good man is entrusted with a secret. Therefore, the good man will not get drunk." Watch how ridiculous he's made to look when we counter with a single syllogism on the same pattern. Of the many we could advance, it's sufficient to instance one. Quote, "No person who is asleep is entrusted with a secret. The good man is entrusted with a secret. Therefore, the good man does not go to sleep." Now, just let each of us name for himself the people he knows can be trusted with a secret, though they can't be trusted with a bottle. I'll give all the same one solitary example myself, just to prevent its being lost to human memory. Life needs a stock of noteworthy examples. No need we always go running to antiquity for them. Lucius Piso was drunk from the very moment of his appointment as warden of the city of Rome. He regularly spent most of the night wining and dining in company, and slept from then until around midday. Noon to him being early morning, he nevertheless discharged his duties, which embraced the general welfare of the whole city with the utmost efficiency. The late Emperor Augustus, as well as Tiberius, entrusted him with secret orders, the former on appointing him governor of Thrace, the conquest of which he completed, the latter when he left Rome for Campania, leaving behind him in the capital many objects of distrust and hostility. I imagine it was because Piso's drunken habits had been such a success so far as he was concerned that Tiberius later appointed Cossus to be prefect of the city. This man, otherwise dignified and self-controlled, steeped himself in liquor, soaking it up to such an extent that on one occasion in the Senate, having come there straight from a party, he succumbed to a slumber from which nothing could rouse him, and he had to be carried out. Yet this did not stop Tiberius writing in his own hand a number of letters to Cossus, the contents of which he did not consider suitable for communication even to his ministers, and Cossus never let slip a single secret, whether private or official. If you want to arrive at the conclusion that the good man ought not to get drunk, why set about it with syllogisms? Tell people how disgusting it is for a man to pump more into himself than he can hold, and not to know the capacity of his own stomach. Tell them of all the things men do that they would blush at sober, and that drunkenness is nothing but a state of self-induced insanity. For imagine the drunken man's behavior extended over several days. Would you hesitate to think him out of his mind? As it is, the difference is simply one of duration, not of degree. Point to the example of Alexander of Macedon, stabbing his dearest and truest friend Cletus at a banquet, and wanting to die, as indeed he should have done when he realized the enormity of what he had done. Drunkenness inflames and lays bare every vice, removing the reserve that acts as a check on impulses to wrong behavior. For people abstain from forbidden things far more often through feelings of inhibition when it comes to doing what is wrong than through any will to good. Add to this the drunkard's ignorance of his situation, his indistinct, uncertain speech, his inability to walk straight, his unsteady eye and swimming head, with his very home in a state of motion, as if the whole house had been set spinning by some cyclone, and the tortures in his stomach as the wine ferments. Where is the glory in mere capacity, when the victory rests with you, when all the company lie prostrate around you, slumbering or vomiting, declining all your calls for another toast, when you find yourself the only person at the party still on your feet, when your mighty prowess has enabled you to beat all comers, and no one has proved able to match your intake, a barrel is none the less enough to beat you. What else was it but drinking to excess, together with a passion for Cleopatra itself as potent as drink, that ruined that great and gifted man, Mark Antony, dragging him down into foreign ways of living and un-Roman vices? This it was that made him an enemy of the state. This is what made him no match for his enemies. It was this that made him cruel, having the heads of his country's leading men brought into him at the dinner table, identifying the hands and features of liquidated opponents in the course of banquets, marked by sumptuous magnificence and regal pomp, still thirsting for blood, when filled to the full with wine. Explain, then, why the good man should avoid getting drunk, using facts, not words, to show its ugliness and offensiveness. Prove, and an easy task it is, that so-called pleasures, when they go beyond a certain limit, are but punishments. Letter 86. Here I am, staying at the country house, which once belonged to Scipio of Africa himself. I am writing after paying my respects to his departed spirit, as well as to an altar, which I rather think may be the actual tomb of that great soldier. His soul will have gone to heaven, returned in fact to the place from which it came. What convinces me of this is not the size of the armies he commanded, for Cambyses equally had such armies, and Cambyses was merely a madman who turned his madness to good account, but his quite exceptional self-restraint and sense of duty. This is something in him which I find even more deserving of admiration at the time when he finally left his country than during the time when he was fighting for her. Was Scipio to stay in Rome, or was Rome to stay a free democracy? That was then the choice. What did Scipio say? "I have no wish," he said, "to have the effect of weakening in the least degree our laws or institutions. All Roman citizens must be equal before the law. I ask my country then to make the most of what I have done for her, but without me. If she owes it to me that she is today a free country, let me also prove that she is free. If my statue has grown too great for her best interests, then out I go." End quote. Am I not justified in admiring that nobility of character which led him to retire, to go into voluntary exile, to relieve the state of an embarrassing burden? Events had come to the point where either Scipio or democracy was going to suffer at the other's hands. Neither of these two things could justly be permitted to happen. So he gave way to her constitution and, proposing that the nation should be no less indebted to him for his absence from the scene than for Hannibal's, he went off into retirement at Liternum. I have seen the house, which is built of squared stone blocks, the wall surrounding the park and the towers built out on both sides of the house for purposes of defense, the well, concealed among the greenery and outbuildings, with sufficient water to provide for the needs of a whole army, and the tiny little bath situated after the old-fashioned custom in an ill-lit corner, our ancestors believing that the only place where one could properly have a hot bath was in the dark. It was this which started in my mind reflections that occasioned me a good deal of enjoyment as I compared Scipio's way of life and our own. In this corner, the famous terror of Carthage, to whom Rome owes it that she has only once in her history been captured, used to wash a body weary from work on the farm. For he kept himself fit through toil, cultivating his fields by his own labor, as was the regular way in the old days. And this was the ceiling, dingy in the extreme, under which he stood, and this the equally undistinguished paving that carried his weight. Who is there who could bear to have a bath in such surroundings nowadays? We think ourselves poorly off, living like paupers, if the walls are not ablaze with large and costly circular mirrors, if our Alexandrian marbles are not decorated with panels of Numidian marble, if the whole of their surface has not been given a decorative overlay of elaborate patterns having all the variety of fresco murals, unless the ceiling cannot be seen for glass, unless the pools into which we lower bodies with all the strength drained out of them by lengthy periods in the sweating room are edged with Thasian marble, which was once the rarest of sights even in a temple, unless the water pours from silver taps. And so far, we've only been talking about the ordinary fellow's plumbing. What about the bathhouses of certain former slaves? Look at their arrays of statues, their assemblies of columns that do not support a thing but are put up purely for ornament, just for the sake of spending money. Look at the cascades of water splashing noisily down from one level to the next. We have actually come to such a pitch of choosiness that we object to walking on anything other than precious stones. In this bathroom of Scipio's there are tiny chinks. You could hardly call them windows, pierced in the masonry of the wall in such a way as to let in light without in any way weakening its defensive character. Nowadays, moth hole is the way some people speak of a bathroom, unless it has been designed to catch the sun through enormous windows all day long, unless a person can acquire a tan at the same time as he is having a bath, unless he has views from the bath over countryside and sea. The result is that bathhouses, which drew admiring crowds when they were first opened, are actually dismissed as antiquated as soon as extravagance has hit on any novelty calculated to put its own best previous efforts in the shade. There was a time when bathhouses were few and far between, and never in the least luxuriously appointed. And why should they have been, considering that they were designed for use, not for diversion, and that admission only cost you a copper? There were no showers in those days, and the water did not come in a continuous gush as if from a hot spring. People did not think it mattered then how clear the water was in which they were going to get rid of the dirt. Heavens, what a pleasure it is to go into one of those half-lit bathhouses with their ordinary plastered ceilings, where you knew that Cato himself as Aedile, or Fabius Maximus, or one of the Cornelii, regulated the warmth of your water with his own hand. For, however high their rank, it was one of the duties of the Aediles, to enter all such premises as were open to the public and enforce standards of cleanliness and a healthy sort of temperature, sufficient for practical purposes, not the kind of heat which has recently come into fashion, more like that of a furnace. So much so, indeed, that a slave convicted on a criminal charge might well be sentenced to be bathed alive. There doesn't seem to me to be any difference now between your bath's warm and your bath's boiling. What an interesting window into the past, and also into some things that never change, right? Like, people are just ungrateful about the things that our ancestors would have been thrilled about. Imagine not having air conditioning. Ugh. Oh man. My thoughts for today. I'm thinking about how to deal with that feeling that you get either before a debate or during a debate or a conversation with somebody. That feeling that you feel right when you might be wrong. When you did like what I talked about yesterday, like you seek out people that might know something you don't and you ask them to prove you wrong, that feeling that makes you not want to. That's what I'm thinking about today. How do you deal with that feeling? How should we deal with it? Is it a good feeling? Is it a bad feeling? I think it's bad. If it's bad, how do we get rid of it? And I'm thinking about questions that I ask myself when I feel that feeling. Questions like, if I was wrong, if I end up being wrong, what about that thing I'm wrong about, or what in my life will have to be changed if I end up being wrong and this other person was, what they were saying was true? Who would I need to call up and contact and have a conversation with, admitting I was wrong and why I was wrong? Like an uncomfortable conversation, right? How am I feeling right now thinking about being wrong on this thing that I'm thinking about debating, or that I'm worried about being wrong on, or that I'm having that icky feeling about, right? How describe that feeling specifically in the moment? And then try and figure out, like, what's the source of that feeling? What is that feeling centered around? Where is it coming from? What's the worry? Like, if you're wrong, what bad is going to happen that's causing that feeling? If I'm wrong, how would somebody that I admire, no, I'm saying it wrong. Think of somebody I admire and ask how they would handle being wrong. How would they handle being wrong in a respectable way? Might I want to handle it in the same way? And if I handled it in the same way as they did, would I not be proud of myself instead of the icky feeling? And then sort of finally, like the last question, probably the most important question, is, given all of that, given all the answers to everything I was just asking about, take all the bad, take all the good. You'll have to admit you're wrong. You'll have to be wrong. You'll have to publicly be wrong. You'll have to, be fallible in front of people, whatever the reasons are behind the feelings. Like, let's say it's something major, like religion or abortion or some major topic. You might be wrong. Well, those are life changers, right? That's going to change how you behave. That's going to cause feelings of either pride or regret about how you were previously, probably regret. You might have feelings of regret on how you previously spent your life. You might have deep guilt on some things that if you're wrong on, like if you took actions around positions that you're wrong on, there's guilt behind that. So you'll have to deal with that stuff. So given all of that, take it all together, ball it all up, all the negative, all the changes you'll have to make, the negative feelings, the guilt, whatever, take it all, ball it up together, and then put that in one hand. And then ask yourself, given all that in this hand, put the truth in the other hand. Put knowing the truth in the other hand. Given all of that in that ball, is truth more or less important to you than all of those things and feelings and drama and guilt and all that stuff? What is more important to you? Knowing the truth, holding the correct positions, or all of that? If your answer is that the truth is less important than all of that, I think you might be subscribed to the wrong channel, first of all. But you should really, really take a pause and question your goals in life and your standards in life. Putting those things above the truth will lead you to ruin. There's no doubt in my mind. If your answer is that truth is more important, and you really embrace that answer, and you really mean that answer, then your emotions, how you feel about it, should flip. They should invert. And I'm probably going to talk about this all again tonight on the Disenthrall Show because I think it's important. But your emotions should flip to where it doesn't feel bad anymore. You don't have an icky feeling anymore when you're going into a situation in which somebody might prove you wrong. You want to be proven wrong. You're happy when it happens. You appreciate the other people when they're able to prove you wrong. You're thankful to the people that are willing to debate you to try and prove you wrong. You welcome it. It's the opposite. So anytime I experience that negative, icky feeling, I go through this mental process that I just talked through. And I try and get myself back to that acceptance of truth as the priority so that the emotions flip back towards that end. That's what I'm thinking about today. All right, guys. Have a great day.